I'm Chip Bach, and welcome to Blue Rock. On each episode, we'll discuss what life is like on this big blue rock, where we are all headed, separately and together, what changes we need to make to ourselves, the planet, and towards each other, and just discuss what daily life is like for your fellow crew. And maybe, just maybe, we may also see a commonality that connects all of us. Welcome to another episode of Blue Rock. On today's episode, we're going to talk about an ancient Hawaiian practice called Ho'oponopono. Ho'oponopono is an ancient practice of forgiveness. So why would Ho'oponopono be so important to us right now? And what could it do for humanity? Well, for those of you paying attention, this big blue rock we live on could really learn to forgive. We're one big human race, one ohana, or family, as the Hawaiians would call it. We need to let go and move forward as one human race. No countries, no borders, no governments, no races, no genders, no creeds. So what is Ho'oponopono? Early Hawaiian historians and many Polynesian cultures, it is believed that a person's errors, the Maori call it hara, the Hawaiians call it hala, are their sins or their errors, that these things caused illness. Interestingly enough, Yetzer hara in Hebrew is an inclination or impulse to evil as an essential part of human nature. Now, I find that interesting because it plays into yin and yang. We're also talking about cultures that historically existed across the entire planet, literally on opposite sides of the planet, or this big blue rock. I'm going to keep inserting that in here. So it's fascinating to me that as wildly and vastly different as they all are, how they all carried the same philosophy towards life, saw the connection of energy across all of their own people in their geography, but how that also ended up being shared without the internet, without airplanes, without boats, and all those other things that physically connect us. So Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian practice of reconciliation and forgiveness. The Hawaiian word translates into English simply as correction. It's practiced throughout the South Pacific, including Hawaii, Samoa, Tahiti, and also New Zealand. That's where the Maori culture comes in. It's a practice of extended family members meeting to make right broken family relations. Some families met daily or weekly to prevent problems from erupting or getting worse. For example, sometimes Hawaiian families met when a person became ill. They believed that the illness was caused by the stress of the anger, of guilt, recriminations, and lack of forgiveness. So, for example, when a child fell ill, the questions that would be asked of the parents are, "What have you done?" They believe that healing could only come with complete forgiveness of the entire family. Polynesian islanders, including Hawaiians, obviously, believe that the sins of the father will fall upon the children. Now, what I find interesting is there's some similarities here to epigenetics, which we'll talk about in another episode. Also, similar things like the emotion code, which we'll also talk about in another episode. We may get into a little bit here on this one. So, for example, now remember, if a child is sick, they felt that the fault falls on the parents as they may be quarreling or committing some type of misconduct, either with other families or if it was tribal with another tribe or another island, etc. In addition to sickness, social disorder could cause sterility of the land or other types of natural disasters, so hurricanes, tsunamis, earthquakes, etc. Harmony could be restored only by a confession or an apology. Now, originally, it is believed that the word ho'oponopono may not specifically have been used. Hawaiian historians documented that there was a belief that illness was caused by breaking kapu, or spiritual laws. So even though the word ho'oponopono, the way it's used today in modern teachings or in modern cultural beliefs, there was still this common thread that by breaking kapu, or spiritual law, that illness or some other kind of problem could occur directly related to this. So we're getting things that are very close to what other cultures refer to as karma. So, based in the Polynesian culture, the illness could not be cured until the sufferer atoned for the transgression. So, often with the assistance of a praying or healing priest, known as a kahuna pule, that was used. Forgiveness was asked of the gods or from the person that had a dispute. Ho'oponopono corrects, restores, and maintains good relationships among family and tribal members by getting to the cause and source of the trouble. So let's break down the word ho'oponopono, because I think that's important. So literally, ho'o loosely translates to cause. Ponopono is defined in Polynesian languages as to put in order, correct, revise, adjust, regulate, rectify, or to make orderly or neat. Basically, to correct, as the shorthand definition of it is. So, what is the process of ho'oponopono? So, again, are we looking to do this globally in our modern culture? Well, maybe, if it works for you. But let's look at what it was traditionally and what the process was. So you can kind of get an idea of, okay, so there was this ancient process of forgiveness. It clearly worked. I do think we need to have that today. So let's look at what that looked like. So traditionally, the process begins with a prayer. Now, again, does that mean it's religion-based? Not necessarily, right? We can meditate, we can sit and think quietly or say things quietly to ourselves, and it doesn't have anything to do with a particular religion. So traditionally, the process begins with a prayer. A statement of the problem is made, and then the transgression is discussed. Sounds like something a lot of our government should be doing. Anyway, I digress. The family or tribal members are expected to work problems through and cooperate. They're not to hold on to the fault. So letting go of whatever the transgression was, letting go of whatever the bad deeds were, is vitally important. Probably the most important ingredient in this recipe, so to speak. So one or more periods of silence are then taken for reflection on the entanglement of the emotions and the injuries. So again, to review, there's a small prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it. The statement of the problem is said, and whatever the issues are with that problem, whatever's occurred, the back and forth, whatever happened is discussed. Then they're expected to, the two sides as part of this process are expected to work through this, to get to some form of resolution or cooperation. And the biggest thing is to not hold on to who was at fault, regardless if both sides were at fault or just one side was at fault. After they've done that, everybody's just to sit quiet and just think about what they've done, what others have done, but more importantly, just let it go. And then after everyone's feelings are acknowledged and addressed and aired out, then there's the confession and repentance and forgiveness take place. So you've now said what you didn't like, said what you did. You ask for forgiveness, and it's forgiven, automatically required by everyone that's there. In the Hawaiian culture, everyone released or performed kala, which means release. So they released each other and let go of the fault, let go of the transgression. More importantly, there's another word in Hawaiian called oki, which is to end. They cut off the past. So they performed oki or said oki. That meant that everything's done. It's in the past. And at that point, together, everyone involved closed off the event with a ceremonial feast. On the Hawaiian island of Molokai, the close of the event also included presenting the person being forgiven a lei made from the fruit of the halal tree, which I kind of like. I kind of like that whole, you're giving somebody a gift after you've now kind of all had a discussion, vented what was going on, and you just let it go and you move on. So the beauty of Ho'oponopono, and some of you may have heard in other episodes, I think I spoke about this in the episode with Dave Kalama. In that interview, we talked about that. In my family, I discovered Ho'oponopono probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Started incorporating it into my family, my relationships, etc. And I have to tell you, it's a shorthand that really prevents things from building up. It helps to end arguments or disagreements quicker. And more importantly, they end cleaner, meaning that there's an acceptance behind the word Ho'oponopono and the concept behind it, that if everyone understands where it comes from, understands the purpose behind it, that and everyone agrees to function that way, it can really shorthand everything. So it's not about not becoming angry. It's not about not getting upset with somebody. It's not about making not making mistakes. It's more about, we're all human beings. We all are on this big blue rock. There it is again. Together. And we need to figure out a way how to work together, how to live better together, and how to forgive each other quicker, faster, and more permanently. For a lot of you, one of the probably the biggest things that most of us have with forgiveness is forgiving and then letting go, right? It's one thing in the moment to say, hey, I forgive you. But if every time a similar situation comes up or a similar disagreement comes up, you just bring it back up again, we just keep reliving the same karma over and over and over, right? So if somebody's made a mistake and doesn't mean they may not make the mistake again. Again, we're not all perfect. I'd love to say that I've made mistakes and then they've never happened again. Just doesn't happen, right? We're human beings. We're fallible, so to speak. So Ho'oponopono has given my family a shorthand. And we're going to talk about how you can do it short. So obviously that's the traditional. What we just went over is a traditional ceremony. Obviously, most of us don't have a lot of time in our day to sit down and get everybody together, have a big conversation, have a big debate, and then have a big feast, and then give gifts. Though, don't get me wrong, that sounds awesome. It's not realistic, right? So we'll go over that in a second. But basically, how we use it in my family, and so I'll go over it this way. It's simply by saying, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. That's how we do it here. And to really shorthand it, you can simply just say, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you. So I'll break down a little bit what that all means. But I want to get into a little bit more of the history of Ho'oponopono, mainly because I think it's important. It's got a very long, ancient and also modern history. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So someone in the early 20th century, a woman by the name of Morna Simona, she was a kahuna lapau, which is a Hawaiian healer. She taught her updated version of Ho'oponopono throughout the U.S., Asia, and Europe. So globally, she traveled around teaching these different philosophies. Now, she believed that a person or family's problems were connected with reincarnation and karma. Now, there's that word karma again. As many of you know, that's a fairly shared philosophy across many different cultures. And what I keep finding fascinating when you look at Hawaiian and Polynesian culture, and you look at Native American culture, and you look at Aztec cultures, Egyptian cultures, and on and on and on, there's all these common themes of reincarnation and karma. And we'll get into more of that in a second. But I do find it fascinating that without what would be been considered modern technology, internet, airplanes, boats, cars, in order to pass these common beliefs around the planet, but yet they all existed and they were there and recorded, and we can see them. We can see all these common threads, but yet there doesn't appear to be any physical connection that could have occurred. I'm very fascinated by that. So she believed that problems were only as the effects of negative karma, saying that you have to experience by yourself what you have done to others. She also said that a person being the creator of their life circumstance was common knowledge in early civilizations, as were things that we had brought with us from other lifetimes. So there's that reincarnation thread again that I've talked about earlier in this episode, and we see across the different cultures globally. Now, please stay with me. There is a science behind this. We're going to talk about some other things that have been done in relation to this that kind of tie this whole thing together. So bear with me. I'm not getting all woo-woo on you. Stay with me. Trust me. It'll all make sense. So also, any wrongdoing is memorized within oneself and mirrored then in every entity and object which was present when the problem's cause actually occurred. She regularly stated that the law of cause and effect predominates in all life and lifetimes. Her theory was to release unhappy negative experiences in past reincarnations and to resolve and remove traumas from the memory banks in this life as well as others. So Morna took things to a whole nother level, right? So remember, the ancient cultures referred to Ho'oponopono as an act of forgiveness, but everything was very much in the present. And then obviously you were supposed to remove and no longer hold on to anything from the past. She took it a step further in the fact that this could have happened in previous lifetimes energetically, and that you needed to release those as well. Now, what I find interesting about that is, and we're going to do another episode on this at another time, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to the author of the Emotion Code, but where I was going with this is the Emotion Code, developed and written by Dr. Bradley Nelson. This is the Emotion Code is a modern energy healing technique designed to help identify and release trapped emotions. These can be emotions which are harmful emotional energies from negative past events. Now, what I find interesting about the Emotion Code, which is very rooted in modern science, is that it's not just things that have happened in this lifetime. It can be things that were passed through DNA, through birth. So you could have inherited those emotions or those trapped feelings. And they can be passed from generation to generation. So science has been able to show that there is some imprinting that occurs energetically that can be passed from one to the other. So when you start getting into quantum physics and string theory, et cetera, there's a lot of base science that supports this. But it explains a lot, right? Because sometimes people are going through things now that they may kind of struggle with. Why did I always react that way, right? When you're a baby, there's certain life experiences, whether it be from your parents or your school or things you've gone through, that imprint upon you like a program. Well, that's kind of easy to go back and look at earlier life traumas and say, okay, well, I react this way to people or I react this way to things because of something that happened to me in my past. But sometimes there's a way that you've always reacted. And so the question then becomes, where did that come from? Because if it didn't happen in this lifetime that you're in now, where did that reaction occur, or where did those feelings come from? So it's pretty interesting that, let's say your mother or your father experienced some of those things in their lifetime and reacted and felt that way, that then you could be born with those same things. So now we're talking about ways of removing not just current problems, whether they be, resentment, anger, fear, etc., and other types of emotions that may be impacting how you interact with people or how you respond to different problems, etc., in your life. But they could be things that weren't even yours. And the emotion code gets into that. And again, I don't want to get too far ahead on that because we're going to do an entire episode just on that. Probably more than one, but I'm going to try and do just one just on the emotion code and kind of what that looks like. Because again, very fascinated with how these things all intersect through current science and through current discoveries that have occurred in this century and how they can really, really help all of us. And again, it's one big blue rock. So if we're all feeling this, as you've seen from some of the interviews, it does get shared, right? There's a common thread. So I keep talking about the science behind this. So let me break that down again just a little bit further, because you'll start to see this all pulling together. Trust me, I'm going to put it all together, and I'll stop saying that. Anyway, Einstein established through the law of conservation of energy that energy cannot be created or destroyed. Science knows now that human consciousness is actually energy and that the physical brain does not create consciousness. This was a belief that a lot of science was built upon, in the fact that our brains actually created consciousness. They now know that it simply houses consciousness, and they know that consciousness is energy. So if consciousness is energy, and Einstein already established that energy cannot be created or destroyed, then technically that means that consciousness never stops existing, even if you were to end or leave this lifetime. So again, just stay with me on the science. So then, is this science proving reincarnation? Again, if you just follow the threads, is that what we're now saying? So quantum physics has also proved through quantum entanglement, or again, what Einstein referred to as spooky at a distance, that energy can be passed from one particle to another regardless of time, distance, or space. So again, energy can't be created or destroyed. Quantum physics has proven through entanglement that energy, again, which can't be created or destroyed, I'm just going to keep rehashing, so stay with me, can be passed from one particle to another, and all that occurs regardless of time, the construct of time, distance, or space. So if that's all true scientifically, and consciousness, thereby emotions, thoughts, are all energy and they can't be created or destroyed, then it is possible for them to be passed from one generation to the next. Thereby, karma can be still addressed or can still go along with you from one lifetime to the next, again, energetically. So then Ho'oponopono not only needs to be done for current transgressions, but also technically could be done for past transgressions in this lifetime, a previous lifetime, or genetically passed to you by relatives as well. Pretty interesting. And that all being said, if energy can't be created or destroyed, and everything is made of the same, atomically made of the same molecules, which is, again, now we're getting into quantum physics, then that means we humans on this big blue rock are way more connected energetically than originally thought. And we'll get more into that in a minute too. So to tie a bow around this, humans can pass emotional energy from father to mother, to daughter, to son, human to human, lifetime to lifetime, and science is now proving this. Quantum physics, etc. So at this point, I feel like I've taken us on a lap around this big blue rock. So I'm going to try and bring this all back together to where we started. So remember where we started was Ho'oponopono, ancient Hawaiian practice of forgiveness. Obviously, that can be tied to karma, to previous emotions, current transgressions, past transgressions, and a way for us to resolve those, put them in the past, and just move on. So now let's bring us to 2022. If you know all of this now, you understand it to some extent, how do you use it? So let's go back to what I talked about before, which is how we use it in our family. So again, the shorthand for this would be to, let's say you have an argument with your wife or your daughter or your son or your parents or your neighbor. Doesn't really matter. You have a disagreement, you have an argument, you don't see eye to eye on it, and you simply are able to say to the other person, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you. Now, the longhand, that's the shorthand. Now, the longhand of that would be to say, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, I love you. So let me break that down as to what that means, because if you don't understand what you're saying, it's very hard for that to actually have an impact on either side of the equation with this. So again, obviously saying I'm sorry, that's pretty straightforward. You're saying I'm sorry for whatever it is you did. It may also be how you reacted to what they did. So remember, this isn't always just about the person who committed the transgression, whatever that transgression is. Both parties are at fault. One of the things I've found is important to understand as humans on this planet, and more so now than ever, is that there are two sides to every coin, meaning that how you react to someone is as important as how they are acting towards you, meaning that we need to stop saying things like, well, I only yelled because you yelled, or I only did that because of what you did, or your actions made me do these other poor actions. We're only responsible for our own actions. So if we can stop blaming others for how we react, that's going to go a long way towards what's at the root of Ho'oponopono, and what would be at the root of how do we move this whole planet along together. So from that perspective, when you say I'm sorry, both sides can say that. So you can say I'm sorry for yelling, and the other person can say I'm sorry for yelling back. Forgive me. That's the next part. That's pretty obvious. Forgive me for what I did. Forgive me for how I reacted. That's a very important part of this. Now, if you're saying the thank you part, this is where we start getting a little esoteric. But once you learn to embrace it, it can make sense. But it's also not necessary. You don't have to add the I thank you part. But saying I thank you is, thank you for showing me what I did wrong. Thank you for being a part of my life and allowing me to make a mistake that then I can learn from. There's a whole myriad of things that you can do with the thank you part. But again, that starts to get a little bit more introspective and a little bit, as I said, a little bit more esoteric. So let's move on to the last part, which is simply saying, I love you. And you'll hear in other episodes, other interviews that I've done, you'll hear me talk about this. I've heard people say that in current society or in the world we live in, that it's hard for fear to exist when love is present and vice versa. It's hard for love to exist when fear is present. So by saying I love you, in a sense, go back to that ceremony that they used to do when they were performing Ho'oponopono. I love you is that closing part of the sentence. You're closing it off with love. You're leading with love. And that's all that needs to be said. In my family, it works amazing. My wife and I and my daughter understand that when we've done something wrong or reacted poorly, we can simply say, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you. We can text it to each other. We can come and say it to each other. And there's an understanding that in a very shorthand, we end what occurred. And more importantly, there's an acknowledgement and there's an understanding. You're not supposed to bring it up again. That, hey, we're humans. We make mistakes. It is what it is. But in this sense, we're saying it is what it is, meaning that this is what I've done. I'm sorry for it. And the is what it is part, though I don't tend to like that phrase in general, in how it's normally used. In this case, it's more of the fact that, hey, it's over. It's time to move on. A phrase I coined not too long ago is that energy has no emotion, but emotions have energy. So on that note, we'll wrap up this episode. Ho'oponopono. I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you. Chanting this prayer, even in your own meditation or in your own daily life, when you're going to sleep or in your own quiet thoughts, is a very powerful way to cleanse our bodies of guilt, shame, bad memories, or bad feelings that keep our mind fixated on negative thoughts. I use it in my my daily meditations. I've meditated now for over 1,500 consecutive days. And I found it very, very helpful to incorporate, I'm sorry, forgive me, I love you, into that. And then I focus the intent towards whatever I want to apply that to, whether it be my own self, a situation, other people in my life, family, etc. It's incredibly powerful. So remember, Ho'oponopono is a process by which we can forgive others to whom we are connected. Practicing Ho'oponopono allows us to cut the aka, in Hawaiian known as the well-worn path, connection in a very positive, loving way, knowing that we can make the connection brand new. When you become right with others, you become right with yourself. If you want to learn more about this, I recommend a fantastic book called The Book of Ho'oponopono, The Hawaiian Practice of Forgiveness and Healing. It's written by Dr. Luc Bodine, Natalie Bodine Lamboy, and Jean Graciette. And for all of you watching and listening, it's time to say, I'm sorry, forgive me, thank you, and I love you. Until next time, thanks for joining me here on this big blue rock. And as always, find peace, lead with love, and live Aloha.